Hey everyone, welcome to a very special edition of the Ultimate Effort Show this week with Alex.
And Joe.
And we are very sorry that we didn't get a chance to do a midweek update this week. Life got in the way. It was a super crazy week for both of us. But in the meantime, your little RPG monkeys here, we've been scurrying around behind the scenes. We had a chance to sit down with none other than old Hanker Infernail.
Oh, yeah. And a bonus, in addition to Hanker Infernail, we've got two other special guests all in one exciting night coming up. We've got Hanker Infernail. We've also got Brandish Gilhelm and Ingrid Bernal coming to you live tonight, or almost live tonight.
It's a trifecta. But we've been scurrying around. We got that interview done. It's in the can. And basically, we're going to cover his origin story.
Tradition.
We're going to cover how he got started in gaming, how he got started DMing, what games he's played.
Right. Some of those might surprise you.
Yep. We're going to talk about how Runehammer got started, which is epic. And we're gonna talk about old Hankerin's favorite product that he's ever put out, like what he's most proud of. Hint,
yeah,
it might be somewhere behind Joe. So
big shocker.
Big shocker. So stick around. We are very happy to bring this episode to you. We hope you enjoy it too. It was a pleasure talking to old Hankerin. And everyone in the meantime, hope you roll Ultimate.
Always roll Ultimate. Thanks for watching, folks.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Ultimate Effort Show with Alex.
And Joe.
And we're just going to dive right in because we have a very special guest tonight. Somebody who needs no introduction, but I'm going to do one anyway. So don't think you're going to get off the hook.
All right.
He is number one game designer, graphic artist, graphic designer, illustrator. He's a writer, published author, YouTuber, and I dare say RPG hobby influencer, and a major creator. In fact, probably the most generous creator that I know, and I hope we get to talk about that. The founder and head of Runehammer Games. You have a ton of names. A bunch of wild pin names. In fact, frankly, your monogram looks like an eye chart. But
like it gets smaller as it goes down.
Yep.
It's just it's massive.
Left eye and read the top line.
It's like the whole alphabet. But I know you as a Naxamon. I know you as Krull. I know you as Pete and Osric and Zymer, and most importantly, Case. I also know you as Azael, as Lucifer. You are the Hunger to me, the Alien Queen, Durathrax, and Mrs. Stilson.
Yes. It's so hard to find good help these days.
But most people out there will probably know you as Hanker Infernail, Ingrid Bernal, Brandish Gilhelm, or even Braden Gillingham.
Braden Gillen.
I have to say, you are my all-time favorite DM. You are my RPG confidant, in case people didn't know. You're my favorite dancing monkey. And most importantly, you are my friend. And, man, really glad to have you here on the Ultimate Effort Show.
Big time.
Welcome. And
thank you. That was massive. That's like America's Got Talent level. That was
dude,
great.
you're the man. You're the man, and you know it. The man, the myth, the legend.
Right. I hope you brought enough brandish for everybody.
Yeah, I hope so. Spread it around.
Mrs. Stilson, man, that's a deep one. Dang.
Yeah, you are. She's lurking.
She like pulls out the crossbow, right, and shoots the butler when he walks in.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, she's lurking up there in the Mind Palace. I know. So we have a tradition here on the Ultimate Effort Show, and that is we like to start out
Yes, we do.
for our special guest, the origin story. Joe,
Yes,
kick it off, man.
What's the origin story, man? Hit us up with that radioactive spider or that gamma ray burst. Like, what was the spaceship your parents put you on and sent you out from Krypton? What's the origin story, man? Like, it's our tradition on Ultimate Effort Show.
Wow. Well, that's a deep one. I mean, I wouldn't want to go too shallow. I guess if I really had to go deep on the origin story, like if you're talking Krypton level, you got to go in deep into the Wayback Machine. So that would actually be probably before I discovered any of this stuff. It was when I changed from being an islander into a mainlander. So at that time, I think I was like halfway through kindergarten. So, and I took kindergarten very seriously. So to be disrupted during kindergarten was like a major academic setback for me. But I remember coming from Guam to live in Colorado and wondering why would anyone ever live here? This is craziness. Like, there are no palm trees. There's just like, it's cold all the time, even in summer.
Where'd the
And
ocean
anyway,
go?
so as that happened, I lived on Kinnickinnick Street. And I was at that age, especially back in the early 80s, when you're about 7 or so, that's when you can kind of go to school by yourself back then.
Yep.
And because I had moved and I had changed my environment so drastically, I did have a long period there where I was just like riding like my Sears Stingray to school by myself. And like, I was doing first grade and I didn't know anybody and I was kind of weird about it, you know, but I don't think I was weird yet. But I think in that year, I think I became weird because I just wasn't part of the flow, you know, like if you grow up where you go to school, you're kind of part of the flow with the kids and the parents and the whole deal. But I was kind of outside the flow, which wasn't a bad thing. I'm not saying it was like negative. It made me more into like books and like drawing like hollow mountains with little army men in them. And like after school, I didn't know anybody. So I would just like go like dig a hole in like a vacant lot and like get in it. Which now that I say it in retrospect, it doesn't sound that weird at all. It sounds like what everybody did. But for me, it definitely sent me on like the sort of the book path.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You know, and then of course that led to other places of stories that, you know, have been told on the internet many times. But if you're talking Krypton level origin story, then that would have to be it. It was like this massive change of environment that kind of gave me like almost 2 solid years of like thinking time.
Wow. Nice.
Like everything was a little bit on pause of just like, what do I do here? This place is completely weird. It's, for context too, it's right when the little unit came out with the Matchbox tracks that would shoot the car really fast.
Yeah.
And you get all the like the rubbery tracks that you can put all over the place and stuff like that.
Right.
Had just come out. So it's probably about 1980.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is when I had that like pensive period, and also kind of realized I had learned to read on The Hobbit, and I don't think I really appreciated that until I was about 7 and I like went back and read it again. And that's when I was like, I am that person. Like, this is my identity somehow.
Oh,
right.
I didn't know where it was going, but I think it's when the weirding began. Yep.
Okay.
Right? I'm doing this from now on.
I'm doing this shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is my stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get the Skeletors when they come out. That was still like 8 years away, but I am going to get Skeletor.
You got it.
Until next time.
So when did the gaming start? Like, when did you first get into the hobby?
Yeah.
That was 87, I guess. So I was 14.
Okay.
And it wasn't D&D, it was Rifts, and it was GURPS, and it was TMNT by Palladium.
Mm-hmm. And other strangeness.
A combination of those three created our world. That was about the time that the movie Cherry 2000 was out. The Guyver was kind of happening.
That first movie is still the best one.
Cyborg with Van
movies.
Damme was like hugely influential on us as far as role playing goes. Like everybody was kind of fantasizing about post-apocalyptic like gun-toting loners.
Yes.
That was a big deal. Nowadays it's kind of passé. There's not really anything about that.
Right?
Yep.
But at the time that was really exciting. And so that was our theme. The first game that we ever did was homebrew, a mixture of those three worlds, and it was my thing. I've actually posted this photo, and it was called Living Weapon. And I'm playing out of a 3-ring binder, and it was like a big deal to have my friends over, and I wanted to like, show them a good time. So it's pretty funny in the photo. There's like a pitcher of orange juice and a giant bowl of popcorn. Like what the f- is that? But that's where I was at. That was my progress.
The game table.
And it was very influenced by Rifts, and by also by BattleTech with like filling in bubbles. Like for some reason, filling in bubbles was like a thing that I thought was really cool.
Yep.
It's still a thing of
And
perfection.
then I had my players Chris, Matt, and Elrond were my first 3 players that I ever had, and that was 1987.
That's awesome, man. So you jumped right in, starting out with game mastering.
Yeah, and
First thing?
hacking. So
Yeah, and
right
hacking
away,
it up.
I basically would get to like page 20 in a book and either get tired or not understand.
Right.
Like couldn't visualize it. Like, what are they trying to tell me to do? It's kind of like a board game, but it sounds like open-ended or something. But I would just kind of wander off, I guess is the way to describe it. So you kind of then you're like it's a lunch break or something, and you're kind of doodling in your notebook, and the partial reading maybe that you did of like the Rifts book is kind of ruminating in your mind,
Right.
and you kind of write it down. You're like, I think it has something to do with like rolling under on like 3 or 4 dice or something, and it's like 15.
Yeah. Right.
Like why? And then oh wait, it's kind of like it's sort of like flipping a coin.
Right.
And oh well, maybe we can make it simpler because I'm confused. And yeah, I think that's just how it began. Was just raw confusion.
That's awesome.
Right? The fusion. And
Wow.
I recommend everybody plays wrong when you start, because that's the best way to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's
We
so
played
hard
so
to play correctly. That's almost unthinkable. I mean, really, Adam from Order of the Amber Die is really the only person I've ever known in doing this for 35 years who does things correctly.
Wow.
Like, and they are sworn to do it correctly. That's how they verify that they do it by the numbers. It's unthinkable.
Yeah. Right. What even is that?
Everybody cuts part out, and everybody cuts a little part out. Even the most diehard folks will cut a little part out, but yeah, Order of the Amber Die. That's a quick plug. They're so true to it that I think they're truly unique in that regard. So yeah, always play wrong. That's my motto.
Well, and I'll say too. I mean, just for folks who are listening, like I always beat myself up about it. Like I felt this sort of internal shame about it in a way, like that I wasn't smart enough. Like I couldn't grasp it all. Like my eyes would glaze over like 20 pages in.
Oh yeah.
And so I would make shortcuts, and we had great games. We were having a ton of fun, but secretly internally I was beating myself up. Like I'm not doing this.
Anytime you're reading a book and you feel confused, it's like it's a shitty feeling.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
But yeah, that
was a
really
cool
happened
world.
to me. It like tremendously the first time I got into AD&D. But what were you going to say, Joe?
Yeah, no, I was just saying Cinnabar had a cool world, but man, that original system, like, it will make you feel bad. Don't pick that. It will not be an ego boost. Don't read that book. Skip the system part. Check out the setting. There's some cool stuff. The system will make you feel bad. I still feel bad, and I'm in my 40s, and I still feel bad about not grasping that.
Yeah.
The hole still burns.
Right?
But I would just tell folks.
Just play it one more time. I'll get it.
I would just tell folks it's okay though. It's totally okay. Play stuff wrong. The end goal is just have a good time. Have a good time. So
it's better than okay. I mean, it's like I've come to now call it hermetic D&D.
Yeah.
And especially meeting and talking to Adam the other night, that's what I was really leaning into it. It really is like I feel it's part of my identity. I mean, the way that we play, I don't even call it old school essentials anymore. Now we've renamed ourselves. We're playing AD&D, but we play like the bastard version of THACO. It's
right.
It's so not anything I would ever encourage anyone else to do. You know? And that's how we like it.
But if it works for your table,
Right?
Yeah.
rock on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
So you talked about riffs and all that and GURPS and I had a very similar start. Where did it go from there? Like, did you branch out? I know you had some long running games in college where you were playing
Yeah.
D&D and Spelljammer and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Did it branch out from there? Where did it go?
Yeah, I didn't get into AD&D until college. So I started, brace yourselves, but I started college in 1991. But before that, my first true game with a capital G, a true campaign, was about a 2.5 year game of Fantasy Hero, which first edition came out in '85. So I think we were on second edition Fantasy Hero, and our game master was Dave, and Dave had gotten out of high school and gone and done 2 years in the Marines and gotten hurt and come back. But he was like the homie. Like, we knew him from around the parking lot and like Taco Bell and stuff. So like when he came back, it was kind of early, he wasn't supposed to be back for a few more years, but he was back, and he was like older than us by like 3 years. And he was like, he had his shit, like I think when he was in the military, it was like all building up in his brain. So that when he came back and we were all like, yo, we're kind of getting into this, that, and the other thing, he's like, I want to run a game. And we're like, oh yes. And it stuck and it worked, and everybody played like every single week.
Oh man!
Yes.
So it had that momentum that gets so crazy that everybody watching or listening here probably knows about, which you get into that flow where you can't wait for it to keep going. And that was, I think, when I really got my eyes
+hour
open
sessions
to what it is. Yeah, and Dave was my true mentor of like running with it, but also like surprising us and like, but being very social and very, very kind with everything, not being adversarial, but also being this sort of frightening, like demigod kind of comedian in a way, and like being this weird thing that makes like a really, really cool GM that you want to see every single week. And we were like too young to drink. So without drinking beer, like you can play D&D for so long.
Right.
Like you can just keep going and be just as sharp at the end as you were at the beginning.
It's the cheapest fun you can have on a weekend in college, I promise.
But that's really where I got, my mentorship was good old Dave. He really showed me what's up.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really great.
Oh yeah, man.
Well,
yeah, man. I can't even, mentor wise. I'm trying to think like how far back was that? I think for me, I had one. It was I can't remember his last name. It was a guy named Scott. It was the first time like that we played with somebody outside just our regular little circle of all us junior high school. When we were AD&D second edition was out. At that time, I think Magic the Gathering was like 2 years in.
Yeah.
And the local game shop called Just Imagine had just like started renting the second floor and got stairs. So they had tables out because people wanted to play Magic. Like it was before tournaments were really big or anything. It was like Magic was still fresh and new. But we had Scott. He started running Star Wars D6, and that was the first time I experienced that.
Yeah.
And he was kind of, I guess, because he was older. He he worked there. He ran the upstairs part. Like that was kind of a mentorship, and clearly learned stuff there. But learned equally from all my buddies. But that was also my first big game. I had 7 people, and it was the only time I've ever run 7 people. But I ran Star Wars D6 for the first time with 7 people instead of just like the 4 friends. So that's cool.
Crazy.
That's awesome. You guys will get a kick out of this. My first game was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness. But very quickly, we went straight into DC Superheroes with that crazy, if you read about it, the MEGS system. It's like the Mayfair exponential like game system, and you had to roll percentile dice and look up stuff on a chart. And crazily enough, it worked. Yeah, we loved it. Like we played the heck out of it.
That's awesome.
I don't recommend it, but anyway.
Dang, yeah. I mean, I guess speaking about game design, like, is there any specific things that like helped develop those game design bits? Segue from D100 percentiles.
Like for me, I don't know. I mean,
those developer skills, or?
I never really thought about it until I was well into post-college career life. Like I was just doing my thing. I was just whatever. I drew a lot, like just compulsively, and that made me stumble into my video game career. But even then, I was just drawing compulsively. I wasn't doing anything. I just wanted to go like ride my bike and drink beer on the weekends, and just like pretty basic person.
Were you always good at drawing, like from the jump, like even from?
No, not at all. I really, really struggled with it until college, really. Yeah. I always hated everything I did, and I couldn't do any of the classic stuff, like volume studies and stuff. I couldn't do it. I couldn't look at a plant and draw it for a dam. I couldn't do any of that stuff, and it just seemed like something that was out of my reach. But I just sort of just did it as a compulsion. And by the time I had finished college, I had like sort of accepted like Sharpies as like my prison or something. I don't know. It's hard to describe this mindset, but I just decided like Sharpies are just like how I draw. And it set me free of a lot of expectations that come with like doing a pencil and then doing light pen and then doing heavier pen and then doing shading. And I can't do any of that shit. But if I just take like a Sharpie and I could just like bang out. And so in late college, I started this series called Megabot. And Megabot was this like really funny, kind of bubbly superhero robot guy who did all this dumb stuff. But he like, I think he existed like sort of in like feudal Japan. Like it was really, it's really random, but it was just a series of like things that I was drawing in places. I would draw it like on the wall in the bathroom of the bar or whatever. I would draw like on bicycles, and I was starting to draw on different objects, and I was just really flowing into this Megabot thing. And that's when I stumbled into like somebody said, dude, you should go. They need somebody to draw submarines. I shit you not. That is how my whole video game career started. They need somebody who can draw submarines. And I've seen you draw a bunch of weird stuff like that, and you should totally apply. And so I did, and I got the job.
Wow.
And then that's when I really had to start evolving. But as like a game designer, that never really even came to my mind, I would say, until, I don't know, like 99 or so. Working on a sort of a doomed massive multiplayer fantasy game that we did, and we had a little bit of a vacuum of the design component. But working on video game design is vastly different than tabletop, because you need to codify everything into fixed outcomes. And even that I had a really hard time with. And it really wasn't until way down the line, much more where people are familiar with me, like 2013 or 2014, when just because of my tabletop groups, there started to be this weird feeling brewing. And I never even really wanted it. It just sort of started happening, of being like, it started exponentially increasing in fun. And it was like really getting better and better. And these little tricks were starting to recur to where my players would sort of see them coming, and they'd be like, yeah, that's your little thing you do, Oh,
wow.
I'd be like, what? What are you talking about? Who are you?
What thing?
What thing?
That's awesome. Well, I want to take a small step back. What about your critical eye for graphic design and that sort of thing? I mean, because in terms of like layouts with your publications now, like I've never seen anybody better.
Now that predates my drawing life by many years.
Okay.
So when I was 8 or so, I started making little books, and I would use like yarn to sort of stitch together pieces of cardboard, and then I'd make like a little 8-page book. And then in junior high, I started making them a little more advanced, and I was doing these stories about fish and stuff. I was like really had a big fish phase. And then in high school, I was the editor of our high school newspaper in my sophomore year, which had never happened before. So I was like writing editorials and doing all the layout and kind of like working with a team. And I bet everybody hated my guts, by the way, but that just because of chance, that's also when PageMaker came out, like on the Apple II.
Oh, yep.
So like, this is a little gnarly to wrap the head around, but this is, 1989 or so. So PageMaker came out, and I went to my newspaper teacher and I was like, yo, making negatives is cool and everything, but we should do this digitally. And he's just like, you're out of your damn mind. And it was so primitive. we would actually make a printout and then photograph it to get the negatives to send to like the print machine. Like
Oh my gosh.
that's how analog it was
old
right at the
one.
beginning. But then eventually we got a way to go straight to the printer. And with my newspaper director, I figured all that out while doing
awesome.
like an issue every 2 weeks. And
Right.
so the layout thing just was a constant
All the
part of
reps.
what I was doing.
Right.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
also found it's super easy to get A's in college if you can do like layout work on your papers. The substance of your paper is almost irrelevant. If it's like easy to read the first page and it's like has some kind of enticing border or some dumb shit, you're at least gonna get like a B minus.
Like you eat with your eyes first. Like
Yeah. So that became a thing. Like I always did layout in my college papers of like how they'd go left to right, and there'd be a little bubble with a little guy that'd be waving at you, and that is like always. I've always been fascinated by that. Doing it on Macs. Remember the Mac with the handle in the back?
Yeah.
I did my
Absolutely.
first 2 years of college on that thing and like designed so much stuff. And I would go straight to the die-sub printer, and like nobody even knew what a die-sub printer was back then. So yeah, I was definitely like a mega like print shop dork, like I remember when Photoshop came out. It was like I was there like waiting to download it, but you couldn't because it wouldn't come down over like the .edu server or whatever. So you had to go like down to Software Etc.
Get a physical disc
and buy Photoshop on a floppy disk.
God, Software Etc. Man, that's a blast from the past.
You put that baby in and you're like, oh my God, lasso tool.
What is this madness?
It's not a box.
Yeah, right. Or a circle. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
That is awesome.
So yeah, my layout chops, if I have any, are far deeper than my art stuff. My art stuff was always more silly, but layout I was always serious about, even from a very, very young age. I thought I had some kind of idea.
Right.
Then finding out about like
survey says
cropping
yes, you got
images
an
and stuff.
idea.
What's that?
Survey says yes, you got an idea.
But it's just crazy to me because, in terms of how you built those reps and that skill, because, you'll look at something now and you'll be like, no, that font's wrong. Like, it doesn't, that's not the right mood or the right tone or not the right size, or, you need the inverse or the negative, or, you just really have that eye for it. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
it blows me away.
Well, reps is a really cool word because reps, it doesn't make it sound like talent. It just puts it on repetition and just sort of being involved in it.
Right. Well, like reps at the gym.
I really like that word reps. But yeah, like typeface is a very elusive skill. It really, I think, just almost just doesn't make sense to a great number of people, which is really understandable because they're just like whoever even really talks about it.
Right.
Like it is very, and like the one thing you'll hear is like, oh, go read the Chicago Guide to Style or whatever. And it's like trying to read the phone book. It's like every possible case. What am I supposed to take away from this? It's like every possible thing you could ever. So it's a really elusive thing. I guess the eye is what you call it. Yeah. Like, I do seem to have that. Yeah. I have a sort of a stomach level reaction to typeface. Yeah, it is. Right. It's like extreme form of nerdism.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Layout, design, the art chops. It's just amazing. It's awesome to hear how all that sort of developed and then kind of came together.
Yeah, and coming together.
Really weird with no plan.
I got a question about another origin story: the forging of the Runehammer. How did? Where was the decision at, or how did that come to be?
Well, it all started really when I started phasing out of like this sort of tribal phase, which was kind of in the early 90s. And a lot of people were in that phase. It was kind of like the dawn of Burning Man, sort of. And it was really cool. But yeah, exactly. And I actually, in retrospect, I really thought it was awesome. It's like the hacky sack era.
Yeah.
And as I was coming out of that era, I was like finding out more about myself and my family lineage and all different stuff like that. And I started getting into like Viking things and like Norman culture and Bronze Age culture. And that's when I really like discovered Mjolnir and the concept of Thor's hammer, and like became totally enraptured by it, just as a symbol, like as a sort of a I wouldn't even say I was like a pagan person at all. It was just a thing that was like, yeah. And I got like a big Mjolnir tattoo on the back of my neck. And from that moment, I just started identifying that way. So I took the design, which I had done for the tattoo, and I started just using it as my profile pic. Just, I don't know, because I just thought, and the concept of it in Norse mythology is really cool. It's like a symbol between like men and bigger beings, which may or may not be gods. They're just bigger than us. It doesn't make them infinite, and this kind of stuff that I really relate to. Right. And that image just started becoming like identifying me, and I sort of nicknamed it because I didn't like saying Mjolnir all the time. It sounded super dumb. So I started calling it like the Runehammer. Like people would ask me what it is. I'd be like, that's like the hammer of runes or the Runehammer.
The J is silent.
So right, exactly. Yeah, it's got a J right in the middle. You wouldn't even know.
So that's the roots.
I started identifying at it. So I started signing my work with a little upside down sort of cross shape.
Nice.
And it just sort of started becoming how I would express myself. So it just sort of started gaining momentum.
Yeah.
And I don't know, at some point it just became a thing. It was more like a logo rather than just a little blip. And that was probably around 2013 or so.
Okay.
Right.
So now we're kind of building. We've talked about you developing these chops. You've identified with this symbol. And in this whole time, I assume you're playing RPGs and that sort of thing. You're in the hobby full time.
Oh, yeah.
When did you make the decision to create Runehammer as an entity and make your passion for the hobby a business? And how did that come about?
Well, I screwed around with the Daring and the Doomed first, and I knew that I had something special there because I don't have a lot of patience with games and learning rules, and so I wanted something simpler. And I was kind of really into pixel art at the time, and I kind of waved at the world with Daring and Doomed as far as being Runehammer goes, but I hadn't made any decisions at that point.
Yeah, and for folks who don't know, that was a card game, right?
Yeah, that was a card game. And so that was just the start. And then I switched jobs. I went to Carbon Games, and I was doing like transforming robot stuff with them. I was doing concept art.
That's cool. And
at some point in there, I moved from my 5e group, and because YouTube kind of mixed into when I was playing 5e right when it came out. Like I got, just like you guys probably, I got the 5e books like the day they shipped. And so we played that, and as that was happening, there was Drunken and Dragons and stuff, but Runehammer had already existed. And so I got the job at Carbon, and I was doing that job, and it sort of just, it was becoming more distracting to think about what I was going to do like that Saturday night for the group than like the coolest job you could ever hope to have. So I'm doing this super fun job, and yet I'm kind of going like, actually, it's all right. I'm actually more worried about, how to like make these Saha Gwyn like jump out of the water in an interesting way or something. Plus I only got like 3 minis, and I want to have like 14 on the board. So like, what am I going to do?
Wow.
How am I going to get that?
Like super stupid kind of questions, but it just reached a point of momentum. And so when I got the test group for Index Card RPG with Monkbeal and those guys, they were coworkers at the time, and we played like 2 sessions of that really primitive form of sort of what used to be 5e, cooking into the dice types and stuff like that.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And after the second session of that, I think there was just a moment of us sitting around the table, and we're like, what fucking A, like, this is better. And they're all like egging me on, sort of, you know what I mean? And I'm in a suggestive state. It's the end of like a 6-hour D&D session.
Right.
So I'm like, hell yeah. So I just went and I just quit my job. And I was just like, I really didn't have the plans yet of what to do.
No
I just
way.
sort of,
Both feet first.
I just did it. Yeah. And then I'm like, I need to like put something on the market like immediately.
I need to eat.
I need to figure this out.
What am I going to do?
I had started working on literal index card Sharpie drawings at that time. So in the last like month that I worked at Carbon, I had done like the first 100 index cards, but with no digital tools or anything, just like on my lunch break, just drawing like a roper on an index card, like and just so I could use it at the table.
Right.
Really?
That's
yeah.
awesome.
And I think when I had that impulsive moment of like, I'm going to bail on my career. I think like I had those in front of me. That's what I was working on. And I was like, man, I bet a lot of people would like to have these. Like, but without the blue lines on them.
Right? Boom, here come the card volumes.
I got to figure out a way to get the blue lines out of these.
Oh,
Because I had done like 120 at that point. So I'm like, these should probably be in digital form. This is not a safe storage medium for a 1,000-hour project.
yeah. Oh, so you were roughing them in using like a blue pencil and then going back over with Sharpie to do the line work.
No, just draw with a Sharpie.
Oh, you just with a blue Sharpie.
No, the blue lines, I mean, because they're index cards with blue lines on them.
Oh, right. You weren't using the white side.
No.
You were using the line side.
Yes, I was using the line side.
What have I done?
Exactly.
I've done 100 of these.
Planning.
Right, I've done 100 of these.
Why didn't I flip them over at some point?
Right. Oh my God, that's brilliant. I love it.
Epic. It's epic.
Well,
So then that first volume came out, and it definitely paid my rent like right away. And then it was serious, and all my guys were like, "You got to do that system that we played with the simpler dice types. You got to release it. You got to make it a book." And then I just started working around the clock to get the core system done. And that's when a lot of people were discovering me on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I was well into like sort of looking into the Palantir every day at that point. I was staring right at Sauron there for a good 3 months.
So it's got to be absolutely crazy now to see ICRPG along with Viking Death Squad on store shelves with that Modiphius deal. That's got to be a hell of a, like, how did that come about? From like the humble beginnings to
Chris Birch is the founder of Modiphius, and he was just a fan of my, like a lot of people are fans of my art because it kind of like takes them back or something, or makes them feel like something they could do. Like it's got a finger painting kind of vibe to it. And he was one of those people, and he just kind of hit me up, and he's just like, he basically said, "Yo, your art is really cool. I need like what did he say? I need like a sheep, like a mountain goat bard." D&D, right? I mean, of course you do.
Right.
Of course you do.
Who
yes.
doesn't?
Yeah. What is it, next week? Of course you do. Something like that. It was this really odd request. And I was like, yeah, I can do some art or whatever. Just kind of doodling it out. And he's like, by the way, if you ever want to do some kind of distribution or something, it'd be cool.
Just like throws it out. I'm looking for a mountain goat bard. You want to do a book?
Joe, I had no idea who he was. He just presented himself as Chris Birch. I had no clue who he was. He didn't have like a title on his thing or anything.
Oh man, that's
so wild. I just thought he was just a fan, which he still is. He's still a human being. I'm not saying he's not just a person, but
yeah.
So this kind of relationship went on, and I was just like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I kind of know some people and stuff, and this, that, and everything. And start kind of spitballing ideas with him, and I really was being kind of mean, to be honest, because ICRPG is like my nest egg. I had a bad deal that I did in the past, and I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to be locked out of my own products.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I'm kind of being a little bit of a jerk about it. I'm just like, I don't really need partners. I kind of just following my own weird path and stuff. And he's like, all right, well, if you change your mind. And then I came back and I was like, well, what if we did this? And he's like, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. And like, after like a month of this, I look at one of his emails and I scroll down for the first time. It says founder, CEO of Modiphius. I'm just like, I am such an idiot. But by that time, it was too late. We were like really casual. It was like a really casual conversation. So it's not like we're going to get all businessy all of a sudden.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that's how it all kind of came together. We were just shooting the shit about drinking beer and like arguing about Spock and, talking about like whether or not Conan is a good environment to play role playing in because Conan's such an overbearing character. And
Right.
random shit, basically.
Right.
Yeah. But that's how that relationship kind of formed. And then,
great.
fast forward a little bit and these super high quality books are part of their flow. And now second printing is coming.
Yeah.
It's hiding behind
and and it's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah. So it's great. Like from these humble beginnings of quitting your job to draw index cards to your buddies egging you on. Mm-hmm. Now your baby is on shelves, including Viking Death Squad. Does that freak you out? Does it weird you out? Like people will send pictures like, hey, it's on the shelves at a game store in Canada.
No, I think, I've worked on a lot of high profile stuff over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it is exciting. Like, like I was lead artist on Shinobi 3D, which is like, that was a massive milestone in my career. But you put so much work into it, it's like it doesn't really feel weird. It's just like what you're doing. So it actually, I think it'd feel weirder if it wasn't like on shelves. And I'm like, what is wrong with my life right now? But to be honest, it's really not. I wouldn't call those books on shelves and stuff like my baby. Like I have so much personal sort of dialogue going with so many people, thousands of people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I try to be like really on that, like that's the number one task of my work. That's the best part. That is absolutely the coolest part. And some of it's negative, some of it's weird and a little bit confrontational.
Yeah.
Some of it's like inspirational, like life-changing, crazy shit. But a lot of it is just, gamers just being like, hey, dude, like it's extremely minimal in a lot of ways. But they're like, yeah, we kind of just did this, that, or the other thing, and like thumbs up. It's not like dramatic.
Right. Yeah.
But that to me is the funnest part. I really love that part. And to be at the center, it's it's like having 5,000 players in a group. And they're all reporting to you a little bit, these different little tidbits about all this stuff that's happening and all over the world. And it really gives you a really, really privileged appreciation of like how many people in how many different walks of life are into what we're into. And that is a very like bolstering feeling of just like, I got to keep going now. Like, I don't want to be no chump. Rather than like, oh, wow, my book's on a shelf. I made it. I don't think I've ever felt that really.
Yeah.
It's much more about all the people out there who are like rolling dice every week.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, I think I want to skip ahead here maybe a little bit. Ooh. And I want to say, number one, do you have any other product or creation that you put out that's sort of your favorite?
Oh, yeah.
Number one. And then number two, I want to talk about this new website that you have, or this redesigned website with all kinds of fun stuff available for folks. I want to get that out there and let you talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite thing, hands down, is Hardsuit. I had doubts about Hardsuit at first because a little bit what I talked about on my stream earlier tonight is that it may seem like it's sort of out on some kind of fringe or it's sort of gimmicky, than that it has like, big raw kind of stuff in it, which is in that game. Yeah. But I think of the things I've made, nothing has worked better to actually just set it down and open it and use it.
Yes.
Without interpreting it, with just being like, and not doing it on purpose, not being like, I'm the kind of GM who only rolls thing, not really being like that, just having this thing here. And then when a question comes up I don't know the answer to, just fully embracing what these answers might be.
All right.
And I had never really gotten it down on paper that good before.
That's awesome.
A lot of RPGs, they're super cool ideas, but it's up to you to deliver it or to somehow take it, turn it into gel, and stick it on the table. And I feel like with Hardsuit, it's very seamless how it goes right on there. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why sort of we didn't think of this sooner, but like having a D100 table of people, that has to be in every single RPG book now that ever
Right.
is published.
Holy
It's
crap!
so handy. And I know that some like DCC does stuff like this, like a lot of NPC
Mhm.
tables. I know that Mike Evans, who did Hubris, he does a lot of that stuff. He does these D100 tables with like people in the village
Yeah.
and stuff like this. It's just I had never done it for myself, you know, and so that's when I really like can see it in my own way at my own table. So I do think Hardsuit is my number one favorite thing, and then seeing my players get so emotional about it is kind of vindicating.
Oh, that's great. I will say on that list of villagers, we just got done talking to Kelsey about this because she has several tables in some of her adventures. She has an appendix with a villager generator that's super cool. I know she's putting a lot of that stuff into Shadow Dark. You know, so it's really cool now to have that conversation with her and then turn around and have it with you. And have you say, you know what, my favorite thing is this villager generator, this person generator. Like, that's epic.
Yeah, like I have a cool combat
Infinitely
encounter
useful.
ready to go, and I'm really excited about it. And it's got a lot of complex mechanics, but I don't know who's selling bread.
Yeah, right.
Right?
What are you talking
Are
about?
they even
Like, I
selling
have
bread? I
things
got to
to
roll
do.
and find out who they are. Ooh, we got a Cooper barrel
Yeah, it's
maker in the house.
Biggins.
Well, right. I mean, well, that's it. I mean, we talk about that, you know, from a DM standpoint, that's one of the hardest things that you do, especially when your players put you on the spot. You know, you're responsible to a degree for the whole rest of the world and every supporting character who isn't them. And how hard that is.
What was the wine merchant's name?
I think it's Nindle Biggins.
Right? Crap.
Wasn't he
I
the
should
guy
have written
selling
it
swords
down.
in the other town? Well, you know,
Yeah.
hey, he's got a side hustle. What can I say?
Yeah,
Right?
it's a distant relation.
Right? Crap. Which accent did I use for them?
Oh yeah, old man.
What was their voice? Right?
Yes.
I'm old.
I'm old and I'm an NPC named Nindle
I
Biggins.
didn't know you were called Dennis.
No, only on my mother's side.
But yeah, it has been such a fun experience. It's also a 3-player group, and it's also a little bit like a boiled down group from my AD&D group. So we've got 3 players who have a harder time, you know, finding time every week. They're totally enthusiastic, but it's hard, you know, it's just, this happens.
Yep.
But these 3 players are the ones who are just like, they just cut the time out of their life to be there, and they just like can't wait to be there. And so that also is important in that. So it may not be that Hardsuit is my best publication, but as far as my 2-table experience, it's by far the best. And seeing them starting to roll on the loot tables and rolling on the seafaring tables and doing hex rolls as we move, and that has been an absolute blast. And these are all things that people have been doing in games for years and years. I just hadn't fully leaned in on it until this book. So,
that's great.
Man, are they fun mechanism to use when they're nice and concise.
Right.
If they're
That's
hard
a
to read
beautiful
or they're
book.
long or confusing, that it's not going to work. They got to be like one line. You got to really make them tight.
Yeah. That's for all of us.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful book.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous book. I'm gonna just be transparent and let out a confession. I had not purchased it yet
Alex, faux shade. No, you're gonna freaking love it.
until today. It's on its way.
Nice.
It's on its way.
If you have a 3D printer or know someone who has a 3D printer, you can also pick up the STL files for Hardsuit miniatures. Check those out because they're. I mean, look at that little guy. You want to have one of them like around on your table. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I've got
So
some
that has
Shameless
been
plug.
back there somewhere. There.
it was also kind of unique in that it was really a player's idea to send me down that rabbit hole.
Oh, that's cool.
So as Dirty Jobs season 1 was starting to wrap up, he's like, you ought to do something with like a sort of a sci-fi twist on it, you know, and see like where you could take it. And every once in a while, little comments like that from someone you trust, they go deep into the pituitary gland, and like there's no turning around. You're like, I can't think about anything else.
Right? That's awesome.
I got to make Jimmy happy.
My medulla oblongata is on overdrive.
Burning.
Well, all I could say about it is thanks, Jimmy. They're dope.
Yep. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks. Well, so tell us about the redesigned website.
Yeah,
Because
Runehammer.online.
this is a recent thing. You've kind of retooled it. Now you
Yeah.
have a lot of stuff that's available for direct purchase, along with some swag. I think
Yeah.
is probably a good thing.
Well, probably
It's
the
awesome.
biggest thing that I and many other creative people put off is like figuring things out. Like the doing of the creative work is the fun part. Nobody wants to figure out websites and stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
we got to be honest here. It's
Yeah.
super miserable
That
to do.
business.
So I've been putting it off forever, and the cost of putting that off is basically these huge cuts that other publishers take. But the return that you get is you get to be part of communities and audiences, and it's great. So I don't ever want to say that there's anything wrong with that, but just to be fully honest about sort of what caused all this is like I'm looking at my sort of 6-year summary, and I'm looking at like a couple more years, and like when you're a very small business, obviously you need to sort of build up some debt so that you can continue to pay your rent as you grow. But now I've grown quite a bit, but man, like sort of taxes and other debts that build when you're a business, they do sort of snowball and they can sneak up onto you and roll right over you.
Yeah.
And so I'm not at that point. I'm not in the disaster point, but I'm smart enough to see that it's like right there, like rolling right toward me.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when I really had that realization, the first thing I had to do was like I had to go through my 4 steps. I had to first like accept it, and then I had to grieve. I had to deny it. Then I had to negotiate with it. Then I had to accept it, and then I had to grieve. And when I got through that grief at the end, I was really upset. I was like, "Is this the end of Runehammer? Like, should I just, I could get into like beer journalism. I don't know. This is just how my brain works.
Yeah.
But I just realized like the only way to go is forward. Like a lot of people are counting on me. I'm counting on me.
Yeah.
To do this. And so I conquered this sort of procrastination step, which is to get into like direct selling things, which may not sound like a big deal, but to set it up and make it feel right, it definitely takes many very long days of absolute focus. Like you cannot be interrupted. If you leave like 8 windows open and you're figuring out e-commerce and you go to get like a hoagie at 3J,
it's gone.
bro. When you come back, you are back to square one.
Right.
Learning curve. It's gone.
It's all of a sudden like an SNL skit. What the heck is that thing?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
God.
That's what the heck is that thing?
Well,
so I went through that, and I feel like I reached a pretty good place, and I figured out like a good merch provider. I kind of had a false start with a different merch provider earlier this year, but this one's much better. The quality's much better. The prices are better. So it's the beginning of a really good spot. So it's kind of, I appreciate the T-ball here, but really where it's going, it isn't really about selling things that have been available in the past, or even really about merch. I'm not who I am because of merchandise.
no, that's right.
Yeah. What it's really about is what is about to happen, which like my next release, which the 3 of us are working on right now, will be only available through direct. And that's like when you truly commit, like you're basically saying my readership is enough that we can do this on our own without an awesome sort of jump-starting site like Drive-Thru RPG.
Yeah.
You're saying I love you guys. I absolutely love Drive-Thru RPG. I love Chris Tang was the man. He no longer works there now. He's doing his own thing, but he took such great care of me for years. He is the shit.
Yep.
If you're watching this, dude, you are my man.
Yes.
Thanks.
But it's also like it's a growing place, and there is a cut that you pay to be part of that community. And if I can not pay that cut, I can pay my taxes properly.
Yep.
And then I'm like on a healthy path as a business. So like, I know that's a lot to take in, but that's kind of the whole existential shift I just had to do in about like the last 9 days.
Well, I would just say, a couple observations here. One, it's awesome that you would be willing to sit down with us and talk about this, knowing this is being recorded, and to be this transparent about it. But I just want to say to folks who are going to watch this, who are listening, buying direct from you really will be a huge help. I hope people go to this website and blow it up and buy a ton of your stuff because it's awesome. Everything you do is quality. I have personally observed the amount of hours that you spend, the work that you put in. To me, it's completely unparalleled. You're a one monkey shop grinding away, and this really is important, for your future and your family. I see this as the next evolution for the business and Runehammer. I think it's outstanding. But I would also tell folks too, you are still the most generous creator out there. Almost everything you put out has razor thin margins, it does. And you do that to take care of people, which I find to be so admirable.
Against all advice,
right? Yeah, I mean, lots of people are constantly hounding you, like, dude, you're charging too little for your stuff, and yet you still do that in terms of generating goodwill, taking care of folks who believe in you. Like, my hat is off to you, man. I really hope that you continue to just destroy in terms of success. Because out of anybody out there, like, you deserve it. Like, you totally deserve it. So
I don't know if this is fashionable or whatever, but it's definitely just my instinct. I honestly don't know if it's viable. It just feels like the thing to do.
Yeah.
So I don't really have an explanation. And you're right, I am hounded a lot about not marking things up enough.
Yeah, not charging enough. I see it all the time too.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like it's like, does your landlord really need to raise your rent every year by $100?
Yeah.
Right. Does that really need to happen? Like, if more people didn't do that, wouldn't that be like a slightly better world?
Right.
Now, I don't want to call anybody out, but I'm just saying, like, I don't think we all need to like shoot the moon on everything.
Yeah, that's right.
And we can kind of just, I also have had some good teachers about like a concept of like a sticky customer. And a sticky customer is really there because every time they've felt like, they've had, yes. And so they want to come back. And that is actually worth much more over the lifetime of the customer than like one time I sold you $1,000 box set with 2,000 pages of craziness.
Yeah, right.
And that customer may feel like, I don't really even play that.
Right.
And might feel a little bit grumpy. And of course, there's a huge spectrum in between, but I definitely fall in the lower end of that spectrum. I really want customers that, as Kelsey would say, would bury a body for me. I really like it when people like know me and they want to like be part of where this is going.
Yes.
Right.
And not just because of me person, but also business. I think it's a smarter long-term business plan to be like, to really like show up and like, fix the guy's exhaust on his Harley because it's broken and just send him on his way. Or,
Right.
Yeah, right.
You don't have to get $50 from that guy, like you can tighten a few bolts and get out of the shop. And it's like, don't worry about it.
Well, that's it.
Right. The cardinal rule, be excellent to each other.
And party on.
Party on, dudes. Man, yeah. So, with all of this stuff, I mean, touched on a little bit about some super secret project. Is there, by chance, a super secret project you might like to tease or potentially share about with?
I would. So it is what we're playing. It's what you're GMing. So, one thing that we've definitely learned, all of us together, as well as more, this group is a little wider than the three of us, is that the best things come from people playing.
Yeah.
And not like play testing, but just the truly emergent madness that comes from just being with your friends and trusting each other and like changing it as you go. And so this kind of harkens back to one of the earlier stories about Fantasy Hero. I think it was when I was trying to write that crazy manifesto book, which I found out was much too aggressive in its tone. I don't want to publish that. But as part of that book, I was writing like a little bit of a memento about what had happened, how I got here. And I told that story about Fantasy Hero with Dave, my GM. And it made me want to, I think, man, I want to go read Fantasy Hero. So I got on eBay. I got my worn out copy of first edition Fantasy Hero from some guy in Ohio, because guys in Ohio have like every book ever made.
Right, they do.
And and I get it, and I'm like, ooh, I open it up, and I'm like, whoa. First of all, this font is tiny and difficult to read.
Yeah.
Then I'm getting into it, and I'm like, wait, why would there doesn't need to be a table for that, you guys. It's a little crazy, and kind of getting deeper into it. And it's got, like, what is it called? The Kriegspiel type vibe, like it's like 1840 and you're simulating like Napoleonic Wars.
Yep.
And I'm just like, holy shit. Like there's too much. It's like so over. So what I did as a project was I started trying to transcribe it into my own words. And I was like, I'm going to do Fantasy Hero Redux. I'm going to write it myself in a clean, new form of language. And I'm going to send it back to these guys at Hero Games, and I'm going to be like, you guys rock. That was how it sort of began. And I got a little ways into that, and already I'm like, I probably don't need this part. And then I was like, actually, this main dice mechanic probably isn't that hot. And this craziness started happening, and that's when I hit you guys up. And I was like, hey, this is kind of just worthless, like armchair thinking if we don't like play it.
Right.
And this first session's going to be bad. Like,
yeah.
Like, brace yourselves, because I basically have 2 pages of material here. So I hope you guys.
Right. let me figure out character creation. I'll shoot you guys that in a bit.
Yeah. Go ahead and create the characters or whatever.
Right.
So that's kind of just the story of what we're working on. And so after several sessions now, it definitely has a lot of really strong guts to it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think all of us started seeing like, wow, this is really not only has a nostalgic vibe to it, but has something new and different from what we've been doing now for 6 years or so. We've been playing ICRPG. Yeah. Or some weird variant of it. So,
right.
So getting into something this wildly different and then feeling like that gut goodness that's a big deal. That's a buoy in the sea to me. So that is what we're working on right now. And that will be that first direct release.
Yep. Because that's one, I mean, all of us at the table, the 2 of you guys, we've also got Kelsey. Hey, Kelsey. And Xander. What up, X?
Yep.
So like, I think all of us kind of felt like there was that thing in the gut of like, whoa, hold on now. This is really good. Like this needs to be something.
Yeah.
We need to keep doing this.
And that's why I got to say too,
we're a couple sessions in.
There's one more piece which is revolutionary to me about this, which is to design it. I mean, I'm still the author. You guys are still my think tank, but I still have the responsibility sort of the author. And to be the author of like a whole system, a whole sort of little cosmos of thinking, but to be a player, not a GM, is the absolute shit. I think it's really not done nearly enough. But not also the GM. You can't cheat. You just have to be the player.
Yep. Yeah.
And so Joe, you've been GMing it, but being the player is when you feel all the emotions, not all of the logic.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so to write from that emotional place and or when you're looking through the PDF as a player, you're pissed like right away.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate that piece about feel. We talk about that a lot, particularly in terms of game design or when we're playing, like what does this feel like? And I'm like, or sometimes I'll just hit you up and be like, hey man, like I'm sort of like, I feel like this, and you're like, go on. You're like, go on.
Yep.
And how critical that is in terms of the game design. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, and being sensitive while you're doing whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being aware of your own state. It's very common in everyday life to just wash that to the back.
Yeah.
Right.
But when you're being creative, like every little spark that you feel is like pay dirt.
Yeah.
So you want to just fess up, like my sword sucks, dude.
Right. Instead of just jumping right to mechanics, like, oh man, this just feels off to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It doesn't feel like it's quite right. Like,
I did all this XYZ and then I was still lame. Why? Well, I don't, because I did it wrong. Let's fix it.
Yeah, let's dig in on it. Yeah,
We got a wire in the wrong place. Let's just swap these around and see how that works.
Why can't my character move?
hadn't been that bad.
Details.
Well, I will say I am sensitive, to putting something on YouTube and being a big tease. And we can't reveal this yet. You can't reveal this yet, but man, it is so good what you've started to create here.
Well, and it's not entirely a tease, because if you want to do your homework, go read Fantasy Hero.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's where we're living, but we are far afield. I mean, we're as far afield from Fantasy Hero as my Dirty Jobs group is from AD&D. So, like, we call it that, but it is by no means that. But if you really want to be a scholar of what it is we're working on, it's out there.
Right?
We're walking on the shoulders of others, as I think is always wise in doing this kind of stuff. We're just taking it our own place and going on our own journey. So it's not entirely a tease. We just don't want to we don't want to drop a bomb until it's really good.
That's it. But I do want to say, so far the impressions have been outstanding. I love it. I know Joe loves it. We've talked about it. I know Kelsey's having a good time. X is having a good time. I think he's a good litmus test. And we had that feeling you were talking about where we want to play every week because it's just been so much fun. So
I'm a real believer in it. There's just a lot of work ahead now. Like it's always easy to be excited at this part. So
the dreaming is one thing, the doing is the other.
Right. It's like that guy that's going to dig an underground city in War of the Worlds. Like
Right. So I want to shift gears a tiny bit and kind of hit you with this. So one of the things that I really appreciate about you, Hank, is that you always seem to be so good in terms of climbing maybe this 30,000 foot view and kind of taking this big picture view of the hobby and maybe kind of where it's going. I just put that on you, and I would say, and you seem to be really super hyper observant of trends in the hobby, and so I think my question would be, I'm curious, kind of what are you seeing, what are you feeling, and where do you kind of think the RPG hobby is going?
Oh man, I mean, well, I think what we'll see is. I think we're going to see a return of some sanctuary in the hobby. I think when Marvel became popular, and a lot of people who really coveted being into something that was not popular had to deal with that. I mean, there's enthusiasm. I'm not saying you're dealing with it, but it was a thing that like old school or long running comic book fans kind of were a little taken aback there, like after that first Iron Man movie, when Jon Favreau really reinvented Marvel and brought all all masses into it. There was a moment where being into Marvel was no longer quote unquote like nerdy. It became popular, and nerdy and popular are not the same thing. Those words matter. So a similar thing I think is happening or has happened. It's hard to tell exactly where we are in it right now with D&D. A lot of people have found out about it, got excited about it, a lot because of Stranger Things, obviously. And it no longer is quote unquote nerdy to be into D&D. And I do think that there was a period there, like maybe last year was maybe some of the worst of it. It felt quite weird to a lot of like long running players of just like I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper, you guys, but I exist. I'm not shunning you away from this, but I've had a parking spot here for like 25 years.
Right.
And I'm showing up and I'm having to park at Subway. Like, what's going on here? So I think now the good news is I think that we're a little bit past that. That whoa, here everybody is, and now they like Van Halen or whatever. We're a little bit gold rush. That initial shocking part, and I think what we're going to see, I hope what we're going to see, is that a lot of folks will continue to enjoy
Yep.
you know, top line D&D, you know, Hasbro D&D
Right.
as it exists, and continue to just rock on. But I do think that the difference between so-called stadium rock and indie rock will return.
Right.
I think we had a confusing period in the last 3 years when no one could tell the difference between, you know, like Katy Perry and Daft Punk. Like everyone was like, it's all one giant concert, and like we're all here, and it's so crowded, and like everyone's yelling of what the best music is, and we're at Coachella, and this is horrible.
Yeah.
But I think what we're going to go back to is like this top line big group. It's huge.
Yep.
We'll keep going and doing what it's doing, but I think we won't be so confused that we're subsumed by it as being more like fringe type role players, or maybe long-term role players, or people who play, you know, offbeat systems and stuff.
Right.
I think we're going to find our old sanctuary is going to be returning as that bigger group. So if you guys remember, skateboarding was originally like for like people in their 20s.
Yep.
And especially like kind of risque, kind of crazy, like surfer types that don't wear shirts, you know, and like have long hair, and they're kind of almost like a postmodern hippie type.
Right up Dogtown.
But then when skateboarding blew up, a lot of kids got into skateboarding, and the initial reaction was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's
You know,
straight
it's
up
really
like the
negative reaction.
It's like the same model as the Gold Rush.
What everybody realized is it's like it's totally groovy.
Right.
Like you got your big spot, you just rock on with it, have fun. We're still over here kind of being weird, and we're no longer confused that, like, you know, we're part of your group or you're part of ours. And not even that we dislike each other. It's just everyone wants an identity. And I think for a minute there, it was really hard to tell, like I'm not in this other group, and I felt weird about it.
Right.
Because we were all in the same place for
We're
a while.
all in one huge D&D group.
Like
Right.
there were so many skateboarders,
Yeah.
many skateboarders in one place that you couldn't even pick out the rollerbladers anymore.
Yeah, and some of them are like in their late 30s and like drinking Schlitz. And some of them are 8.
Right.
And both those groups are totally legit, but they don't mix that great all the time, just because of taste.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
if I could see one trend coming for D&D, for role playing, it's that we'll see that comfort come back. I don't think the indie folks, the sort of hermetic folks, or maybe long running people or offbeat folks, will feel so swamped.
Right.
And I don't think the big group will be looking to the sort of weirdo offbeat group for answers or for some kind of gatekeeping, or like we're the legit people or something. I think all those conflicts are false. I think it's just because different temperatures of water collided.
Right.
Well, yeah, and
that border between the Atlantic and Pacific.
Well, I think that fear, you know, like, hey, like there's this big huge tidal wave, like we're going to get sort of squeezed out here. I think that's been real for a lot of folks who've been in the hobby for a long time. You know.
Yeah.
And it definitely happened to skateboarding too.
Yeah.
You know, it happens to anywhere where there's a limited amount of parking.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, because the true reality of it is like anything that anyone's interested in, it's hard to take too much interest in anything. It tends to burn things out, honestly.
Yeah.
In all walks of life. And so if you really treasure something, you get scared, like, holy shit, this entire parking lot is jam-packed, and it used to just be me and my friends. That's not gatekeeping. That's a totally natural reaction.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I think what happened in the last 3 to 5 years is that a new lot was built. And like, it's like when they add a turn lane in a small town, and like for the first time there's like a turn lane, and everybody's just like, oh.
Yeah, right. Oh, they put in a light. Thank goodness.
I wasn't really mad at you, man. I wasn't really mad at you. I was just so sick of waiting to turn right.
Yep.
Right.
You know, so I think that metaphor really does apply to anything that anybody's interested in. There's just only so much capacity to be in one big movement, and that's, I think, why we see like this sort of super band kind of phenomenon.
Right.
Kind of comes and goes. It's very similar. like
Right.
super bands rise and fall, because it reaches a point where it's just like, I
Right.
can't, you guys, I can't.
Yep.
And it has to cool off and stuff.
Even
And
a
I think we're
souffle
going to go
can
into that
only get
nice
so
cool
tall.
off.
Even a souffle has a height limit before it collapses.
That's right. That's right.
Yep,
And it's a
that's-
good thing.
yeah.
Nature is wise.
Yeah.
Because honestly, how are you going to eat a 3-foot souffle?
1 foot at a time, baby.
Very, very carefully.
That's a hell of an
Stay
answer.
with me. Don't give up
Right.
now.
Right? I'm with you. I'm getting a spoon. That's awesome. Man.
All right.
So I guess going forward, like from all of these big things and stuff, like going forward, like where do you see Runehammer going? I mean, I know we kind of did cover a little bit on, Runehammer Online with like this, with like an exclusive direct buy of this upcoming project. But what kind of things do you see? I mean, more novels, more game products?
And I don't know.
merchandise?
Novels are really hard to write when you're me. I really love writing. I really love writing them, but for me to be satisfied with it, you guys have seen it. I like to write stems and then I kind of give up on them, and that's just how I experiment with ideas. But I would love to write more of those. I would like to write more just self-contained work.
Yep.
Nice.
But when I start, I find I'm not done with this other style of writing, which is the open-ended writing that you find in RPGs.
Mhm.
It's also utility writing. An RPG is a thing to be used.
Yes.
And it's a different style of writing, and I'm just not done with it. So there's a bunch of other things I kind of want to do. Like I really want to do some kind of like beer journalism. And that may seem silly, but
No, not at all.
I feel destined in life to do that. I just am not there. I'm just not done. So as far as what's ahead, I think just more. I think more role-playing stuff. I want to ride this wave a while. I feel like I'm right where I should be. So I'm really, really vibing on like this moment that happened to me when I went to Heilong a little over a month ago.
Yep.
And I know a lot of people, have already experienced that or have experienced it in their own way in different times. So I don't want to make it sound like it's the first time that it's happened or something. But for me, it was super, super transformative. It really just changed how I was thinking about everything. It put my brain back into the Bronze Age, rather than I don't know. I'm not sure how to describe it, but not the Bronze Age. It was more about now, because I really don't believe in like looking back to the past as if it's better than the present. That's not healthy.
Right.
You want to live now and be happy with what you have and where you live. And it was hitting me in waves of that, all that stuff combined.
Right.
And
Like
I was just
a
like, I have
nostalgia
to
for a
somehow
place you haven't been.
communicate this. I have to tell people about this, that it's not about the past, but then also feeling like sadness about like lost things that are distant. And if we focus on them, maybe they'll manifest in some new way and stuff. And like, maybe if we don't forget and we care, then it's not over. And like all that kind of stuff was that. And that's now where I'm sort of trying to come from a writing stance and who I am.
Nice.
Like, I don't know why. Maybe it's because I went by myself. Beware when you go to a concert by yourself.
Right? It hits different.
It's mental. It's mental. Yeah, like you're not just like, hey man, this is pretty cool, right? Yeah, it's all right, sure.
Right?
I don't know. It's more just like
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's what's ahead for me. I want to channel that mindset, and I want to meet more people. I'm really glad that COVID and the pandemic seems to be just about. I know it's still hurting some folks, but it seems to be over enough that we can meet each other freely again. I want to go meet people. I want to get back out in the world and like be in awkward situations and talk about fandom and talk about fantasy and talk about like why nerds matter, why being smart matters, and like school, do your homework kind of shit. I know it's kind of corny, but it's like it is my root from which I come. So I want to I want to lean into that and use whatever sort of this momentum is to do that kind of, go get an A kind of mindset.
Epic.
So you hear that, kids? Study hard, do your homework, and you can
Right.
turn out like
Stay in
us.
school.
read RPGs.
That's right.
All right. I feel like we have kept you a ton, and I'm so grateful for your time. But it's as we're recording this, it's a Friday night. I know you want to hang out. You've got stuff to do, but I want to hit you with just a couple more in a lightning round.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, lightning round.
A lightning round. So, and then we'll wrap this up. So, number one, what is your number one piece of advice for DMs? What would you tell a DM?
Only plan one session at a time.
Okay. What tips do you have for other game designers or creators who maybe want to write their own adventures or products?
Get at least one confidant that you can trust and bounce your ideas off of in private.
Yes.
Awesome. That's awesome. I get this question all the time. Do you still take art commissions?
Yes.
Awesome. And they should probably just hit you up by email, right? If they're interested in having art done.
Yeah. I don't do everything, but I do a lot of them.
Okay. Awesome. What can you reveal about the Council of Mages?
They are more and more involved with the creation of Runehammer things year by year.
Awesome. What are some of the crazy things that we talk about in the council that you're willing to reveal? Because I know folks are curious. What do these goopers talk about?
The impact of the events in our game on the events in the AD&D game.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And what's been your favorite game to run?
Oh. Favorite game? Oh shit! It's the lightning round. It's probably either Dirty Jobs crew or the Evermoon crew from early days of 5e.
Oh, nice.
They were amazing.
Okay. What has been your favorite game to play in?
To play in?
Mm-hmm, as a player.
That's tough. Either the Snake Hunters or the Fantasy Hero game from the end of high school that I was talking about.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Nice.
I know we talked about some of the characters that you played. Who's been your favorite character to play?
Man, that's tough.
Asking the hard questions on the topics that.
Well, it's definitely one of the old man dwarves. So
Mm-hmm.
I probably have to go Osric because you guys were so loyal to him.
Man.
Awesome.
That it was a cool responsibility to have other players just straight up loyal to you. Just like that was pretty rad. And remember too, I did not make it out of the end of that really.
Yeah, I know that one was it was
And I fell in love.
Yep.
And we did the alternate timeline and all that. That was great. Osric was ultra dope. I also really liked him as a character. I stood by him in a moral way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Osric was dope.
It was a great game. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. I tell you,
Oh,
that one
man.
got some deep emotion.
Kelsey had to kill me to get out of the whole thing alive. That was insane.
Oh, she slayed it.
I
She
totally
slayed it.
thought it was so good.
And there was
there
no way,
was-
so I was already gone. So I'm just like, it's okay. It's not on you. Just got to let me go. It was like,
Right?
it was so gnarly.
I was totally solid and stoic. I was like, yep. And then I saw the first one roll down Kelsey's cheek, and I was like,
Oh man!
bloop, and then mine were going. I was like, nope.
That was good
Not
stuff.
holding these
Oh,
back.
man.
It was a good one. It was a great game.
Well,
We got a little into it. And I got one more lightning round question.
what do you got?
If you were flying through space, like really, really fast, and there's another rocket ship flying through space, really, really fast, coming the other way, and you look across and you see it's yourself in there, do you look yourself in the eyes?
Absolutely, and I yelled, "Turn back now!"
Awesome.
It's all shit back there.
Right?
You turn. You
Don't
turn.
do it.
This D&D shit's insane. Once you get into it, you're
Changing
Direct
the SRD.
sales.
They're changing the SRD to the one system rule.
Get a
Ugh.
normal
It's going to be
job.
OSR.
Flip the cards over. Flip them over.
That came full circle.
Well, man, yeah, I went down that in a bow. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate
Yes,
it.
dude.
Talking to knuckleheads like Joe and me.
Thanks, guys. Look
Before-
forward to what you do with the show.
Yeah, we're trying to do something crazy. We definitely want to showcase you and all the awesome stuff you have going on, and you know, this whole Runeverse. Anything else you want to expound upon or touch on before we wrap this up?
Just get as many cool people on the show as you can.
Well, that's our plan.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
after this, we're going to reach out and start trying to showcase a ton of the cool folks in the community. There are a bunch of people creating stuff, and I know are running cool games.
Yes.
Like we want to hear from those folks because I know they're going to have cool experiences.
That is a noble mission.
Yep,
Right.
that's the plan.
Well, there's just so much good stuff and so many great people there that, you know.
Totally, and that's all part of that cooling of the waters that I'm hoping for is like we'll just stick together and just keep doing what we've been doing the whole time. I mean,
Yep.
what else
Right.
are we gonna do?
Right.
Yep.
Like, just look for the good stuff and lift it up.
Yep, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, to you, my friend, thanks so
Hey.
much. You're awesome. And Joe, take us out.
Yeah. So I guess, folks, until next time, take my hero coin and roll ultimate.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.